We're now going to take a very brief look at an expression that's quite similar to the wiggle expression, and that is random. Now, the reason why we're going to breeze through this really quickly is because wiggle is infinitely more helpful than is random. What random does is it generates just random values. The benefit of wiggle over random is that wiggle kind of wiggles around the values that you set. Random, on the other hand, just generates random values, which does come in handy sometimes, and that's why we're talking about it here, but not as often as wiggle does. Now you can select any one of these green solids. If you just type the letter E for expression on your keyboard, type it twice, and you'll see the expressions applied to that layer. And by the way, what we could also do is come up here to this new search area in the timeline panel, new in After Effects CS4, just type in random. And if you have a layer selected, it will show you all the instances of random applied to that layer. Or if you have nothing selected and we hit enter, then we can see all the instances of random throughout the entire timeline. As you can see, it's kind of plentiful here. So here's what I did. I wanted to create a sea of green solids in 3D space, rotated in different directions and at different Z depths, just all over the place. So what I did with these 3D solids is created a random expression both for their position and orientation. And then I applied the random expression to each dimension in the array and gave it some randomness. Now, the values in the parentheses here for each iteration of random is different than what we saw with wiggle. With wiggle, these two values were frequency and amplitude. Here in random, it gives random a range of values to randomize. So by saying 0, 720, I'm telling random, basically for the X position, that you could randomize this anywhere between 0 and 720. That's the width of the composition because it's a 720 by 480 composition. Likewise, I gave it a random limitation or range of 0 to 180. So from the top of the comp to the bottom of the comp. For the Z depth, Z position in other words, I gave it freedom to go between negative 250 and positive 250. I also allowed it to do one complete full rotation from 0 to 360 for X, Y, and Z orientation. Now, as I advance from frame to frame here, you'll see that they are randomizing on every single frame. This is also different than what we saw in the wiggle expression, whereas the wiggle expression tends to just kind of hover around a certain value. But all the same, for what I wanted, a space load full of solids, with solids rotating and positioning themselves all over the place, the random expression worked great. Oftentimes I'll apply random to something like opacity. If I selected a layer here, and this isn't one that we can see, maybe we'll click one that we can see. We'll scroll down until we find that one, and we'll hit T for opacity and create an expression there. Let's go ahead and create the random expression. And this time I'm going to do, let's say, between 80 and 100. So basically, I'll allow it to give me a random value between 80 and 100. And let's accept that and solo this layer. And now as we play this back, well, it's kind of all over the place, so we're not really able to see the differences in opacity. We can see it here in the timeline as we are moving, that we're getting different values between 80 and 100 every single frame. So a lot of times for like lights in the background, if you want to create like a flicker, random might give you more intense randomization than wiggle would.